Ladies and gentlemen, from the Vox World Headquarters in Brea, California, hello, Internet. We are glad that you are joining us today. We have we've been kind of hitting it out of the park when it comes to quality guests. Not according to everybody, but we've managed to snag a big fish in the podcast space, and it's because of mutual friends and just mutual interest about how the function that Christian podcasting serves in kind of the church sphere and the American Christian sphere. So today we've got Matt Carter on from the Bad Christian Podcast. Andy, there are certain episodes where we just have to muzzle Andy. And, that's why we don't have soccer players on. That's why we've not invited hockey players.
I was going to say soccer. I think we would have a hard time there.
Same sport.
Almost, some ways.
It's why we haven't, had Ariana Grande on. And so today was one of those days. Andy, when I first said, all right, how in the world do you do a podcast? He said, okay, you got to go listen to two different shows. They do them completely differently. One is the Liturgist podcast and one is Bad Christian Podcast. And Liturgist was great and interesting and artistic, and then there were these three Southern guys who were just sitting around, and you could picture yourself kind of having conversations with them. So Bad Christian is the name of their podcast, but it's really become a whole network of podcasts, and there's a publishing arm, and they were all part of a band, or still are part of a band.
It started as a band, and then you'll hear Matt explain how Bad Christian started. But the funny thing is that era of bands, a lot of bands from that era broke up. And then in the past 2 or 3 years, a bunch of them got back together.
Right.
And so it was almost like there's this new thing that's like progress of hiatus. Like all of a sudden, all those bands are like, hey, well, let's go do it again. And they got like super popular all over again. Well, Emery is like hung in there from the beginning.
That's Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
That's what Pearl Jam does. They don't do reunion. They've been reunion. That's what I'm saying.
They're always reunion.
They're always reunion. Yes. When they were new, they were reunion.
There you go.
So Andy's got all kinds of connection, and they've had a couple of podcasts that we thought were really interesting. One was called
Death of a Sermon.
Death of the Sermon. Like
Death
Future
of the
Church.
Sermon. Yeah, Future of the Church kind of stuff.
And megachurches have an expiration date.
Yep.
And Matt was really the instigator of some of those conversations. And so we were like, hey, I would love to talk to you about kind of the future of the church, the future of the podcasting space. And so we just got into a wonderfully meandering, fun. He's very, very insightful. I mean, it was fascinating for me because I haven't listened to as many episodes, but fascinating for me just to hear his thoughts on stuff. So I think you'll really like it. We talk about podcasting, mega churches, and why our name is so cool. No, we don't really talk about that. But really. Anyway, here you go, Matt Carter, ladies and gentlemen. Mike has had enough of his fanboy kind of fantasies come true in the Vox podcast. This one's for Andy. We're sitting today with Matt Carter, host, celebrity, mastermind of Bad Christian Media, now including publishing, podcasting, YouTubing. Anything I'm missing?
I mean, I don't keep track either. I just have a bunch of stuff going, and I'm just waiting until some of it'll fail, so I don't have to do it anymore.
Well,
that's my strategy.
The word I want to use is empire. Is that a word you're comfortable with?
Well, you could just think of me as a entertainment mogul, maybe. It's fine. Whatever.
Perfect. And so Andy got me hooked into the Bad Christian podcast right when we were starting to think about our own. Andy, what was your first exposure to Matt and the crew? Just for the people that don't know.
Yeah, for sure. A friend of mine was like, hey, have you heard that podcast that the guys from Emory do? And I was like, no. And then he briefly explained it. And
I thought Emory was a college until you corrected.
Yeah, more than that. And yeah, so I jumped in, I think like early, like episode like in the 40s or something like that.
When did you start? How many years ago was this?
Over 2 years ago.
Well, it was in February. It must have been 2014.
That you guys started?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Podcast, I believe.
What was it?
We're almost to episode 300 now, which is cool.
Well, congratulations. What was it that started this? I mean, it seems like over the last year, the Christian podcast space has exploded. It seems like you guys were kind of early into that into that space.
So.
Yeah. What was it?
Well, Christian podcasts have existed as sermon replays and stuff.
Exactly.
But, as far as original content, I think so. So we were doing, the real shortest way I can tell you is I've been in a band that does this screamy punk emo stuff where you put out 12 songs every 2 years, and it's a very, very focused thing. And so had a decent amount of notoriety, and people know who I am, but I just always felt like they don't know me at all. Like I'm known by this whole personality. It's been frustrating to be known about without being known. I don't like that. I feel like it's, my biggest frustration in the world is inability to communicate or to be misunderstood. It just drives me crazy to a fault. But I just felt like I'm uncomfortable with so many people knowing me but not knowing anything about me. So, and that's just to speak about me, Toby and Joey differently. But we thought we had all these thoughts and all these experiences we wanted to share. You can't share them all through your albums of a narrow genre, or interviews never go good. Whenever we do press, it sucks so bad. Journalists at the level of people that interview us are horrible, almost entirely. I've never done a good interview.
Much like Christian journalists.
Yes, you're right. I mean, it's okay. Like, it's not like Rolling Stones interviewing us. Maybe we could have said something good, but when you get a bad interview, you're just not saying anything of substance. You don't feel safe. It just doesn't work anyway.
Yeah.
I just thought the set of experiences that we'd had coming up through Christianity and the Christian music industry and the punk scene and just being around the regular rock and roll scene for years is just too interesting not to share. And we just didn't have a good way to share the thoughts and reflections and stuff that we had. So we started trying to blog about it. And we just said, well, let's write stuff down that'll be kind of, controversial but true. I mean, we're just trying to say stuff that's real because it's so obvious. It was obvious vacuum that nobody's telling the truth or being real. Everything's manufactured personas online and almost everywhere. So we thought maybe we'll just write our ideas down, but we're not good at writing, and I hate writing. I've always hated it. I've always hated school and writing and all those things. So, we struggled through it, but immediately just from writing kind of honest, poorly written shit, I don't know. I can't say shit. Sorry.
It's fine.
From writing some thoughts and being honest, it was people and being able to share it with our Emory fans. It took off immediately. So we had a lot of big response pretty quickly. So I was pretty encouraged about that, but I just still felt like I was doing homework if I ever tried to write something.
Right.
But I listened to podcasts. It's like, man, talking, that's what it's all about. We sit in the green rooms, we sit backstage, we talk with people from all over the world. This is the format. So I was like, guys, we got to do a podcast. It'll work. It will work. You trust me, this is going to work. But I had no expectation it would work to the degree it did. So we just did an episode. We did one pilot and kind of threw it away, and then figured out how to put some sound in it. I'm an audio engineer anyway, so that part wasn't hard. Yeah. And I thought I had a pretty good idea of what would work, and we just got on there and tried to just talk like we normally talk as best as we can and let people hear it. And it worked immediately. So immediately when we put out our first episode, we had a little bit of the platform, obviously, with Emory and the blog that we've been doing.
Right.
And the numbers were way more massive than anything else that we could have expected or what people. It was just immediately like, okay, here we go. So
are there certain,
we abandoned, trying to write blogs pretty quickly.
Yeah, seriously. Are there certain kind of non-negotiables for the kind of conversations you have or the kind of conversations you wanted to have that still kind of press in after 300 episodes?
Help me with that question a little bit more. Like what?
Like we were going to be ruthlessly honest, like values that you guys said, this is what's going to guide this podcast that have stayed true for 300 episodes. So we're going to be honest. We're going to use real language. We're going to talk about real things, like those sorts of things. Yeah,
those things for sure. I mean, I think that there's, the goal's always been to try to do the best job we can of being like we are off air on air. And also there's a part of a principle where we live in different towns, even though Toby and Joey at one point lived both in the same town. We live in different places, so we literally can almost just catch up and talk like we would and have our hangout be public or something like that. Right. Because we don't get to hang out as much as we'd like to. And so it's just a way to do that and just see what happens. And we haven't changed. We've played around with some format stuff, but we hadn't changed anything about what we're trying to do. I don't think at all. We've changed as people in 3 years. We've changed our opinions in 3 years all the time. But what we're trying to do, it seems even more clear than ever these days. That it's a little bit more intimidating than ever, and I worry about it. because it seems like it's easy to get in trouble. But I know if you just take a deep breath and tell the truth, I'm not interested in doing anything else.
When you say easy to get in trouble, do you just mean like PC stuff?
Yeah.
Or
I think that's the most dangerous one. So the Christian squelching has always been a huge problem, but we've figured out how to break through that. So that's one of the things I'm most proud of is people. All in my whole life of being in the Christian music industry, I just see people being careful, toning it down, making safe choices, not being real. It drives me crazy. So I know that I've just always been looking to break that barrier, and we've been effectively able to do that. And that I don't see that as a threat whatsoever. I don't give a crap what. I feel totally free. I'm not worried about a backlash or it's going to hurt our sales or hurt our numbers. We've cultivated something where that doesn't happen. So I'm most proud of that. But on the other side, I really like the fact that we're kind of progressive and trying to accept new ideas and even move to what most would consider even more left or even more liberal than our upbringing or traditionally. We probably are headed in that direction to some degree. However, that side is very scary as far as when they want to attack or shut you down or make you look bad. That I see as a little bit more danger than the Christian side. They're starting to look like the Christian legalist people are starting to look a little bit more like yappy puppies trying to make noise, but you can ignore them. It's okay.
Right. But on the but on the liberal side, that gets nasty because you're not liberal enough.
Right. That's scarier to me at this moment in history.
Right.
Yes.
Because so on the journey from the conservative side, let's call it, is less intimidating because you've broken through that threshold of honesty and ruthless authenticity, but you're not liberal enough yet for some. And so like I got wind of you didn't have enough women on, or you didn't have enough.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Okay. So when you say that's where the fear comes, is from that side now, which is interesting. Because and
I don't think it's a big fear. It's just, here's the problem. Okay, let me say it another way. It's actually not a problem. It's actually in a way a good thing because it's got a bad edge to it for sure. Or malicious, but there's something amazing about having enough people hear what you're doing that you will get feedback that is totally dead on. Like you can tell some stuff's obnoxious, you can tell some stuff's malicious, whatever.
Right.
But you don't get away with anything. Like if you misspeak or disingenuous or go back on your word or playing a part or being obnoxious or even interrupt people too much, I hear it and they're right. I know they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you just have to separate what's true and not true or what's malicious or whatever. But I love the fact that somebody that's disingenuous, we're in this territory now that is policed so hard that at least that stuff's starting to stick out.
Right.
Which is making the whole climate super weird because you go, oh, that guy that I thought was just a trusted real dude seems like he's being disingenuous. Oh, he was faking this whole time. He's not even really like that. People are just starting to wake up to that notion that the media they've been consuming, even the pastors and left or right wing media, oh, guess what? This stuff is super jaded and slanted and fake in a lot of places. So I love that that's exposed, but it's created a little bit of chaos and tumultuous stuff. So it's a really good and bad side of that.
So do you see Christian podcasting in general beyond the sermon? So it's just flooded now with all sorts of podcasts that some follow your format, some are, they're just all over the map. How do you see the podcast space filling places where, to use the old term, the body of Christ was lacking? What's the gift of the Christian podcast industry to greater Christianity in America as a whole?
Well, like you said, it's all part of the body of Christ, and somebody's got to be the armpit. So we'll be that. You know what I mean? But nobody else signed up for the job, and we can do it. But no, that's the problem that I have with the body of Christ is everybody wants to be just whatever the crown jewel of it. Like that, every church is like, well, we are, and this big, wide, all-encompassing thing to reach the most people,
right?
And I don't like that. It's
Empire.
That's not right. That's everybody trying to do the same thing competitively instead of alternative things or smaller things. And I think it's basically equals lowest common denominator. I say it's the same as if you could only make one TV show, you would have to make Big Bang Theory. That just appeals to the broadest set of people and gets the best ratings. It's not the best show. Nobody thinks it's the best show.
Right.
But nobody can agree on what's the best show because some people don't like Breaking Bad and some people don't like, whatever. This is something counter to that. But at least we can all dumbly sit in a on our couch and veg out to Big Bang Theory
or America's Funniest Home Videos.
Yes.
That'd be my vote.
Which actually is probably my favorite show. But but and that's what churches have seemed to want to do. There's been no alternative. I mean, everybody thinks they're different, but everybody basically thinks they're getting it right, and everybody's competing for one part of the body of Christ, the way I see it. And I think you need way more stuff. And people, it's disrespectful to listeners and audience and congregation to think you need to have it all in package and give it to them instead of let them freaking pick and choose and people don't like the language of pick and choose. I'm not talking about the Bible, but that you're learning and everything you know about and care about, of course you get it aggregated from all over culture. So it's completely obnoxious and disrespectful to pretend like a local church is your source of almost anything, in my opinion, other than the very narrow set of things that it can do. And so things like Christian podcasts or other people, they're doing things way different is all good, no matter what, in my opinion.
How many other podcasts do you ever listen to? I mean, do you expose yourself to a lot of other podcasters or podcasts in the Christian space?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge consumer of podcasts for sure, and yeah, I think probably all over the place. But I don't listen to a lot of Christian podcasts, but some.
Well, it's just the Christian podcast space is an interesting space. You seem to have the sermon, kind of replay. You've got the discussion sort of panel. You've got the Q&A sort of mix. You've got Christian podcasts who do nothing but interviews. And, you guys seem to have this unique space where you're doing a little bit of all of it. And so I was just wondering kind of what do you have thoughts about where the future of that space is headed?
Well, I do think in podcasting that it's a very, very it's blown up and everything, but it's still very small and it's still extremely new. So I don't think any of the best ideas have even been conceptualized yet in podcasting. I mean, I don't know the future of the format. I don't even have any huge predictions. But, TV shows weren't good for 50 years until now. They're unbelievable. Like it took a long time for it to get to the TV used to be this kind of goofy, hacky thing, and now it's unbelievable. So I think podcasting even more so. There's hardly no money behind it. It's independent creators that you largely lack even experience in entertainment who are podcasting. So the future is just super wide open. So I'm very excited to see what will happen. But I don't think we're even scratching the surface yet on what could be done and how the medium could be utilized.
How do you feel, and maybe this is the same answer, but how do you feel about the future of the church in America? You seem to...
A little less optimistic.
Okay. But, all right, I like that.
I'm sorry to interrupt you there, but I mean, if you just put that in the same context of the logic I just used, the church has had a lot of time. We've had a couple thousand years to work on it. And we seem to run into a bunch of dead ends. So that's I don't know what the future of the church is. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not even super down on it. I'm just saying they've had a lot. We're in a negative phase currently. Like we've already most of the good ideas have been had, and it seems like it's been saturated and formally refined and over processed and overdone and overanalyzed for so long that we're in kind of a quagmire. I think.
Yep. And
it's not brand new, or it'd be exciting. If you could erase everybody's memory about the church, start with the Bible and say, let's start over again, I think you get some great ideas. But we're not going to do that. So all we do is talk about how can we add something edgy to our Sunday morning thing at 11:15. Right. You're not going to get anywhere with that.
Right.
And I'd rather throw it out and start over, honestly.
Okay, and that's why megachurches have an expiration date.
I think so.
Is
yeah.
Because it's just the repackaging.
Get on the technicality that they won't technically expire or go away. They'll always be there's still Amish people, right? So it's nothing's going away. It just won't be the power system and the dominant thing is all.
Why do you think that?
Because it's silly. It's obviously silly.
Well, it's obviously except you've got how many people go to Elevation, how many people are with Judah Smith and at Hillsong and whatever else. So in some cultural terms, it seems like, business is booming, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you don't think that's going to continue, do you?
Oh, I do, but I'm interviewing you.
Okay.
No. I don't.
Well, I'm just trying to pose it in the obvious way that this is obviously silly. So I'm not trying to be way ahead of the curve, but I don't think it takes a crazy future thinking person to feel like this is headed somewhere goofy.
Well, it seems like it's doing the same thing for an increasingly shrinking share of the audience. You know what I mean? That the audience that is even attracted to that stuff is shrinking so dramatically, and so you've got to keep upping the entertainment value or the systems, the organization. I mean, that sort of thing.
Right.
And I may have said this in the episode, but I think about this a lot. In biology, there's a term when you study evolution and stuff that says that gigantism often precedes extinction. And it's just when something becomes a big resource hog, it can become dominant, like a dinosaur, for instance. They needed a tremendous amount of resources, and they got so big, they became vulnerable. When an asteroid hits, it's not really going to kill all the bacteria, but the dinosaurs are, a few degree temperature change sinks the whole species, basically. And so you see with the megachurches that you got to be realistic. There's so many stats that say, see, this church is growing, and every megachurch shows what their growth is.
Of course.
The other side of that coin is they're just siphoning off the churches that aren't as attractional on the corner. I grew up in the South. There's a church every 5 seconds away from each other. Those are going away. They're getting empty, and those people are going to Elevation for now. But they're never going back to those little churches. So Mars Hill, Elevation, if I'm taking the most cynical view, they're siphoning off all these Christian communities and pulling people into their system and getting their resources and their money, and they're going to chew a lot of those people up and spit them out, and they're not going back anywhere. So I actually see it as destructive to some degree. And it's not like, people, I've seen it at Mars Hill, and so it makes me sound jaded or cynical. You
were a pastor there?
I was a deacon, a worship leader, a volunteer counselor,
oh my goodness,
things like that. But I never was on staff. But I was there since 2004.
Oh wow!
And left before it got when it got really insane. I left too late, to be honest. But what I saw there is, everybody that ever you went to church with just came from they weren't new Christians. They just came from a smaller church, and now they go to our church, and then our church destroyed itself, and those people didn't go back to their small churches, and a great number of them aren't even Christians anymore. So it destroyed people.
Yeah,
right.
It did that.
Yeah. So how do you?
And so some people have gone on to other churches, or the people that just I have to figure this out and persisted. They're still somewhere. They found a community, whatever. But the people that were just trying to figure this out or be in the stream, they're like, screw this. This is the answer. And their eyes were open to the big mega church, and this guy has all the answers. And then you find out they don't. What do you do then?
Right.
You're out. Unless you're super dedicated and you just can't get, it leaves a lot of people just out. They're just, where do you go? I don't know. I'm not really sure anymore. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Double digits percentages, if not 50. It's not 50, but it's double digit percentages of people that came up, siphoned from a small church up into the mega church. It failed them, and now they're just, what are they supposed to do?
Yeah. Right. We call them refugees from kind of mega church culture.
Right. Because it's not easy to go back to a small, stupider church that doesn't have the dynamic speaker and the sound and the lights and all that. That's not an easy regression to make.
Right.
Because what we're saying is, I think, could we say that like what happened at Mars Hill is somewhat of a foretell of what we're seeing in that entire culture? Because like if it's, I guess we assume like, eventually like something's going to happen at Elevation that's going to cause that thing to fall apart. Something's going to happen at X church or that
But it doesn't have to be an epic fate. Like I don't think you'll see all churches implode and dissolve like Mars Hill. That's not going to happen.
Right.
But they are going to change. They're going to slowly die, most of them. And they're also going to, the other thing I feel like is probably going to happen is they're probably just going to, because they're resource hogs and they're number driven and money driven, they're going to wind up just compromising a lot of their beliefs when they need to in order to survive. That they're totally beholden to the money given to them and their constituency or whatever you want to call it. So as the culture changes, they're going to just change. So you may have mega churches that grow up in the future that are, for instance, gay affirming. And then the ones that aren't will get smaller, or they'll flip because that's what they must do to keep up. So I believe that's the type of futures we'll see in mega churches.
Right. Yeah. It's just totally pragmatic, totally numbers driven.
Right.
So then what's the alternative? If you've got all these refugees, if mega churches are on the way out, where do you see space for people to actually encounter Jesus and each other and all that, Christian-y stuff in community?
Well, I would say, first thing I would say there is I don't feel the necessity to tell that in the fact of criticizing something rightly or telling the truth that I'm also obligated to have a solution. I get that a lot. Oh, what's your solution?
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Big Guy? I don't have to have a solution for what we do with all the slaves when we abolish slavery to know that we need to abolish slavery.
Right.
Right. Well, what's your solution for the economy? How are you going to rehouse all these people? I don't know, but we got to knock this shit off. Sorry, I said that word again.
No, it's fine.
Do you know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
So I don't think it's incumbent on me to have any solutions, first of all. But I do appreciate this conversation. I think that you empower people, and it's okay. It's okay to not have answers. I think if you respect people's minds and you empower them with truth, and let them feel free and untether them from institutional stuff, then I think they'll figure it out. Or as a collective intelligence, I think we figure it out. But as long as you're baby food feeding people and keeping them on the slow drip, I don't. So I'm not that afraid of chaos personally in the church world. I'm just not, But I can see why some people would be. So.
Yeah. So the alternative would be decentralized, empowered. Entrepreneurs, almost spiritual entrepreneurs, looking at different forms, trying different stuff, failing a ton, and seeing kind of where the Spirit moves. Which no, I mean that's I think that's about as far as we can go. Right. But you guys have given a lot of conversation to it and some thought to it. And so I was just curious, the question I want to ask that is unfair to you is, okay, so let's say God calls you to plant a church. What's that thing look like?
I've thought about it a lot. And I used to think I was going to do that. Now I don't think I'm interested.
So what would be pieces of it if you've thought about it? I mean, and we're holding you to nothing, and this is all disclaimers apply.
Yeah. Man, if I could go far enough back in my Evernote, I bet I could find some notes. I think that the important things to do, I mean, it's easier to pick apart things not to do, for sure. And I just think that's the phase we're in.
We'll start there.
I would pick apart. Here's the problem: as soon as you make any criticism, people they just are so resistant to it. They'll go, "Well, you can't say that because I know one example where that's not true." Well, I know, but that's just not an intellectually reasonable thing to not allow any dialogue to happen. But I don't like paid pastors. Well, there's a verse says that pastors should earn their wage. I don't like it because I think it attracts the wrong people.
Ooh,
I think there's one of the biggest problems in church culture is it attracts the wrong people for the positions of power. Youth ministers, Catholic priests, police officers are the same way. Substitute and elementary school teachers are sometimes you get the wrong people attracted to a role, and you can't stop it. And the church has a bad problem of what's the word for it? It just has a bad non-confrontational benefit of the doubt culture that just allows for all kind of negative stuff where you can't criticize somebody, and it's just wrong. I mean, it's not good. It causes a lot of harm and danger. So paid staff and the power of individual celebrities and staff members, I just don't like it. Even on the local small level, I think it's problematic. So you've got to be looking for something that's more democratized. We have that freaking technology now to democratize stuff better, and because the one guy isn't the guy who knows. It's everybody together is smarter than any one guy. I think that's basically a true thing about anything, and that's what I was saying before. Is the internet? All of my Twitter followers together know a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
The smartest person in the world's Twitter feed is smarter than he is. It has more information, faster. That's right. No individual, maybe. I mean, one charismatic guy that studied a lot, been to seminary, may have the actual most information if it's one-on-one competition. But the democratization, the utilization of technology should open up all kinds of things that reduce the amount of power or influence of a single individual. That's obviously, we know that now. The best politicians are unbelievably flawed and messed up and unable to handle a certain amount of power.
Right.
So you got to start by fixing that.
I love that.
Know how.
Yeah.
So we start by having either bivocational or entirely non-paid staff people.
I mean, I'm not making it a rule or
No,
something.
But I think that's really interesting.
I'd like to see where that takes us.
Yeah, sure. One thing that might inform this conversation, talk a little bit about what you've kind of seen on like the BC Club Facebook. So, because like I'm a part of that, I've jumped into tons of conversations there, and to me, that feels like this very decentralized, freeform community. You know, right? That's kind of been pulled around the conversations you guys are doing. But I'm always so fascinated when individuals will be like, "Hey, let's get together," or "I want to start a conversation on this thing." I mean, I haven't felt like I've been able to see something in a public space on like a national level or even like global level where all those ideas collide, and it seems like people really want to have those conversations. I mean, does any of that stuff that's taking place there kind of inform, a prospect that hasn't really been explored, for a church?
So the BC Club Facebook group is an experiment, really, and it's a wild one. It's a zoo over there. I mean, it's completely unregulated, unmoderated, because that just seems in line with the principles of our show. And it changes, and this is true sociologically, but everything changes at different size dynamics. For instance, a small group of 8 changes after you get past 12. People start to behave. You ever notice that? People start to behave differently until, and that's just built into human physiology in the brain, I imagine. So when the club had 100 people or 200 people in it, had a very different vibe than it does now. It's 900 or 1,000 people, and it's like a high school now. So it's as big as a high school, and then you have all the requisite things that go along with that. So it can be unbelievably crazy, and then there's sub-cliques and subgroups and teams, and that stuff just seems to be part of natural human dynamics. But it's founded around our show with people that are like-minded. So what's interesting about it is the experiment of having it uncontrolled would make most people uncomfortable. Most people would have jumped in way earlier and said, we're not doing this, we're going to do all these things, and this is what we're about, but I'm not going to do that. I'm not interested in doing that. So if people want to ruin it, I hope they don't. I hope it can police itself, but my principle tells me you got to leave it be and let it do what it's going to do, and allow the individuals to figure out what relationships they want to make, and hopefully it's productive. But it is a bit crazier once it hit over 700 for whatever reason. It seemed to change a little bit.
Yeah, because I guess what I'm wondering is like,
which it must be true about big churches too. I mean, if you have a church of 14,000 people, there's inherent things in there that are going to be harmful, no matter what.
And that's kind of what I was going to say, because like how much does that sociology experiment stand contrary to people in large churches? I mean, it almost feels like the larger church organization ignores that that's actually happening, and trying to inform from the top and trying to maintain an aspect of control. But if we're really honest about it, I mean, it probably looks a lot more like that than they're willing to admit.
Oh, of course. But yeah, that's just what I'm saying. The church has a horrible culture of not refining itself. And it's really sad. And it comes at a really big cost and harms a lot of people. But yeah, a big enough church has to be more authoritarian. It has to be. I don't like that. I mean, maybe a lot of people do, but I don't like it. It seems wrong to me. I mean, the more I see it and think about it, so I don't.
So that's why you worked at Mars Hill, because they were very anti-authoritarian.
Well, see, but I'm also attracted to it. You can see why somebody would be attracted to that. You want a king, like in the Old Testament. You just want.
Yeah.
You want one. You
That's
want
good.
a solution that's a human that knows something, because you don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. That's not easy. It's easier to say, he knows. That's how humans work. So of course you want somebody to know, but at some point, to keep control and keep that up, it becomes worse. So on one hand, I was attracted to Reformed theology and Mars Hill and Mark Driscoll, because it seemed like it had answers at a time when I desperately wanted there to be answers.
Yeah.
Additionally, it grew as a culture and got larger and became obviously more false and controlling and authoritarian over time as well. So even the church that it was in 2005, I thought was badass. I wish that still existed.
Right.
But nothing stays the same, and that's true about anything. So it didn't stay that way, and I'm at a different place as over time too. So nothing stays the same. So keep that in mind with whatever you're trying to design or do. I don't know if I'll be podcasting in here. It's not going to stay the same. I've been in a band. What is it supposed to do? Last for 40 years? I mean, it's not going to stay the same. Whatever you build, it's just not going to stay.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you're supposed to do with that, but if that's true, it should inform you a little bit instead of trying to build the biggest empire that can never be toppled. That's the most right. That's goofy.
Yeah, and it seems like you want to build something that's adaptive, that can moves quick, that can like respond to feedback, and all of those like anti-institutional things to make it more of organism than organization, all of that sort of thing. Because I mean, if the last 10 years have shown us anything, we're having conversations in the church now that we would never have had,
right?
About subjects, about doctrinal issues. I mean, growing up, I grew up in the Midwest, would never have a million years thought we would be having conversations about ordaining gay folks as pastors and bishops and leaders, and that just seems like it's going to increase in speed.
It will. It's interesting. I don't know if you want to go this direction with it, or if you put much thought into it, but I'm kind of interested lately in thinking about the parallels of fundamentalism from the Muslim world and the Christian world. Like, how do you want fundamentalists of other religions to behave or evolve? Right. And would that not be true about yours? Because yours is the one that's right, where you need to stick to it, and no matter how it seems weird, like, I don't know, that's a little bit confusing, because you say, yeah, but our book is the right one, so we do need to stick to everything it says. But theirs, I hope they kind of let down the super literal stuff. Right.
Relax a little bit.
Right.
Hey, but come on, just update it as you go here. But you don't want to do that with yours. But you got to kind of sit with that a little bit and ask how, what does fundamentalism mean? Like, to what degree can you be fundamentalist and be missing the big picture? Or I don't know. I mean, that's the wrong idea. I'm not sure, but it's worth thinking about.
Does that in kind of summary sort of describe your journey? I mean, I don't know what kind of church you were raised in. Would you have called it a fundamentalist church that you grew up in?
Well, the interesting thing about me, as opposed to Toby and Joey's, I was raised in a very liberal Presbyterian church in the South, where everybody else was evangelical and Church of God and just super charismatic, where I grew up. And so I'll make this as short as I can. I grew up thinking as a 8-year-old that clearly these people at my church don't believe this stuff. This is just something we do. Like, it was liberal to the degree where I was like, well, no, these people don't even believe this stuff, and neither do I.
Right.
Is kind of the experience. I mean, yeah, we go to I thought it was like Santa Claus. Like, this is just baby stuff that we do. I know it sounds silly, but I feel like I was looking at it sociologically as a kid, going, well, why? I mean, Daddy, you don't believe. I mean, come on. Anyway, we'll go along with it, and our culture did a lot. So then when I was just waiting till I learned enough about the world where I could shed religion, because it was clearly just a tool for dummies or something. I don't know what I thought it was, but so I was into science and evolution and debating that in middle school. Like, okay, come on, let's figure this out. Your stuff is silly, obviously. But then I had a spiritual experience and became convinced that the Bible was true. But the where I grew up in still wasn't getting it. So I became, about the time I was in college or something, convinced that there was something actually real there, and I just hadn't understood what it was yet. So I took to like reading the Bible and learning it and trying to understand what it means. I didn't trust a lot of other people. I couldn't find anybody else that I didn't think was a goofball talking about it, because the charismatic goofballs in the South were just like, they clearly didn't seem like they had a good grip on it. And then the liberal people didn't seem like they believed it. So I took to trying to search, and it took me probably 10 years until I found Reformed theology, smart people on the West Coast that were culturally cool at Mars Hill. And I was like, yes, this is real. It does exist. There is a way. There are answers.
Got it.
It could be super logical. I was really attracted to Reformed theology. So, I went in pretty deep on that and thought, yes, this is what I like. This makes sense. I'm going to get this figured out. And it dead-ended in some other way. It turns out I just was blind to its flaws. And so, I'm still convinced that Jesus is real and the Bible is true. Right. Whatever those things mean, I'm not exactly sure.
Do you feel like, though, as you talk about moving left, and I didn't know if that was a singular you or if that was the podcast or the three of you together versus how you were raised. So that may not be true of you. You went from uber left to uber right to more middle. Is that fair to say?
Well, certainly even a liberal Presbyterian church in South Carolina isn't uber left, but maybe within Christian terms it is. But I would say if that's probably my journey. I would also clarify that I have no intent of going right or left. I'm just observing the facts on the ground that I'm farther left. I hate the terms liberal and left or whatever.
Yeah.
I'd actually go progressive, and now I don't. If you know. Progressive to me is more of a pure term in the sense that it means you're progressing. I don't know what I don't necessarily align with anything ideologically about people that are self-identified as progressives. I think they're becoming quite regressive in many ways. But I'm here to learn more, ask deeper questions, and be more mature in my understanding. Instead of trying to make everything black and white and simply getting it right, it seems a little bit more like maturity to me to ask questions and go deeper. But outwardly, or as it seems on the ground, when you do that, you move farther from the right. So maybe you describe it as left. Now, I would say that is also true for Toby and Joey, but I wouldn't stop there. I would say it's true for y'all, and I would say it's true of evangelical church and Christianity and culture at large. Now, the extreme lefty people, I mean, I don't know. I don't even know about them. But in general, I think culturally, everybody's kind of softening on the conservative and rigidity and those kinds of things, right? Like, isn't that kind of society as a whole?
Absolutely.
I think it is. So,
yeah, no, that makes sense. And the safer you make it to have honest conversations, the more ideas you're exposed to, the more people's stories you hear. Some of the things that seemed obvious, 10 years ago don't seem so obvious anymore. I mean, what's the number one reason that I hear from people who become gay affirming? Well, it's I met this person, or I had this relative, that's what's so the democratization of all of this has really opened up storytelling as a means for theological rethinking.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Like, how many things are there out there that are headed trending a direction that there's any possibility of it reversing? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Sexuality, marijuana, alcohol. Okay, dancing. You think we may go back on rock and roll dancing and tattoos at some point as we further clarify and understand theology better? If we get better theological tools, might we return to outlawing dancing? Of course not.
No, you see it with divorce.
Yeah.
Right.
It's become totally accepted in the church. So you'll see it with sexuality. You'll see it with the interesting place that's not happening yet are the political spaces. Those places aren't in any way, shape, or form moving. They're just becoming hardened.
Well, that's troubling in its own way because that points to the fact that people's identities are more deeply that way than they are as Christian. And that's
right.
Really sad.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And politicians now are playing on that in ways that are unbelievable.
Yeah, we're in a little bit of a dangerous time as far as manipulating of people. Like, it's easier than ever before. Like, as we get better at it, like I mean, think about what sitting ducks people were the first time used car salesmen worked up their shtick. They're sitting ducks for the snake oil salesman that traveled town to town. You've never seen that before. You're done. It doesn't matter how smart you are. You've never heard that rhetoric before. You don't know how it's being used against you, blah, blah, blah.
That's right.
And so we have a time now when tons of people and politicians and advertising and marketing have just unbelievable data and metrics, and Facebook and social media. Even AI is good at making you do stuff that you're not even aware it's making you do.
Right.
It's a little scary. So people are being manipulated at an all-time level, and they're starting to come online one at a time. Every day somebody wakes up and goes, wait a minute, I think he's just saying that. Every day more and more people wake up to that, but that's the phase we're in. Well, right. I mean, you'd say that about your preacher or guy on the news. Like, wait a minute, why is he talking like that?
Right.
What is this? And that's every day there's more and more people coming online to that.
And there have to be places where those people gather to have the reawakening conversation. And so I see what you guys are doing, and I see the podcast space, if it's done well, is a place where those conversations are happening that never would have happened 2 years ago. Now, do you guys get flack for being specific in criticism of other pastors and other churches? Because every now and again I'll hear, shouldn't take shots at other people in the body of Christ. God will judge them, blah, blah, blah. If you approach them privately, so on, so on, so on. You guys at least seem willing to say, well, there's something seems funky of elevation. Something seems funky at Mars Hill, blah, blah, blah. Why do you think so? Why do you think so? Because it seems like you guys and others play this sort of prophetic, and I don't want to go Bible-y, but kind of a prophetic role in speaking truth against some of that nonsense.
Well, so do journalists with with politicians or companies.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the government.
But this is new. But this is new in the Christian space. It's not new in the secular space. This is new in the Christian space in ways it's not new other places.
You can make the same argument for government, that government is ordained by God, and you render it into what is Caesar's, and we shouldn't criticize politicians on either side of the aisle because they're the ones that are in charge of us. And come on, you got to give them the benefit of the doubt. That's nonsense. That's preposterous. The fact that we have people speaking out and holding politicians accountable and trying to discover, inequity is a good thing for everything in the world. Why wouldn't it be so in the church? That's why you get hidden people doing really bad stuff, or even pedophiles and abuse. That's where that comes from, because you don't want to question the people of God. That's us.
Right.
That's nonsense. It's preposterous. It's dangerous. So I would never. The difference is, I do have a line that I would draw, and it would be that I can't stand. I think I'm in a sweet spot here. I could be wrong, but I think the sweet spot is that it's wonderful and necessary to criticize, especially if you use humor and satire and stuff like that. People can handle that with everything else, so they should be able to with the church. But the point is to criticize rightly. What I don't like that we see a lot in the media is when you are seeking to harm or destroy people because you don't like what they think or what they do. Yeah. So although I may not like Stephen Furtick, I'm not calling for him to be fired or destroyed. I don't like people are for Bill Maher or Kathy Griffin. I don't like that. I hate that.
Right.
I think Bill Maher is what he is. Kathy Griffin is what she is. More power to them. Like them, don't like them. Criticize them all you want, but don't organize a campaign to try to get them fired and lose their livelihood and make an example out of them. That's tribal and that's dangerous. And I'm not trying to harm a person.
Right.
But anybody deserves to be criticized. That's just normal, especially if you're a public figure, and especially, that's part of the built into our podcast. We constantly criticize each other, and that's why we're balanced people. And we've always done that our whole life. Like, we don't have our band is a pretty democratic band where it's complementary in strengths and weaknesses, and we don't let anybody get away with anything. So that's all we're doing is extending that to the larger and larger group. I think that's necessary. When you get yes men, give me a break. That's wrong. It is. So that's criticizing somebody. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At what point, or do you ever hear this? At what point do we have to move beyond the questions and the criticism to building something? Do you feel like, and I just don't know the answer to this. Do you feel like, what are you building at Bad Christian in terms of the podcast? Is it a culture? Is it a set of values? Is it a movement? What are you building?
I'm trying to help more people wake up, I guess, but that implies like I know something, which I'm not even trying to imply. I'm just trying to, I'll put it this way. I am trying to clear out elbow room. I'm trying to make elbow room for other people. I'm just, going through a jungle with a machete, and I don't care. When I get through the other side, I'm gone. I don't care what y'all do, but at least maybe y'all can get through the jungle now. And if I say something really embarrassing or vulnerable about myself or look really stupid on air and it's okay, well, I know that'll have a profound effect to the people that listen, are willing to do that in their local communities or with their wife. Oh, Joey talked about something super bad he did with his wife, and now somebody else can have that conversation at work. I don't need any credit for it. It doesn't need to be part of my institution or some proprietary community that I built. I don't care.
Right.
But if you can hear me be obnoxious and I'm okay, then you're going to be okay. You can tell the truth too. That's my only goal. Okay. And then there's plenty of people to figure stuff out. So, and I don't know if they're going to figure it out, or I don't know if it'll be the next generation or two from now that anything gets better. It may get worse for 3 generations in a row, for all I know.
Right.
But I'm pretty confident that step one is, just clear out some elbow room and give other people breathing room. So if that makes me the fool, I'm okay with that. It doesn't mean I don't need to be the leader of anything.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Sure. The whole thing strikes me like as kind of just positionally where all this stuff is taking place. Like Mike, you've made comments in the past of like more on the political side of like, I can't wait till this next generation like moves on, like, and how that might shape politics and how that might change our future. I mean, a lot of it just seems like a millennial generation that's kind of stepping into this is our early adopters. They change faster, they move quicker, and they're usually significantly more willing to open up conversations and go into dangerous places. And it does fascinate me that the type of people that are in very authoritative power, both politics, a lot of big church leaders and that kind of thing, are still kind of part of this tradition over the past 30, 40 years for where that's how it's supposed to look. So I could totally agree that the natural progression of change is that's just upon us. We're just kind of in the middle of it. Obviously right. 15 years from now, it is all going to look different. I am just very curious as to how that's going to look in 10 to 15 years with a generation that is so adaptive and so willing to change. And like how, that's obviously a massive hypothetical imaginative idea, but I just, I don't know.
But it still blows my mind that 20 somethings are attracted to megachurches.
That's what I wanted to say, because I was like, but why then do those megachurches still thrive with these 20 somethings? I mean, and Barna, like in September last year, released a thing. It was like, these churches above 3,000 people, this is 6% of the entire church populations that are out there, but yet they're the ones that get the most airtime. They have the loudest voice in the space. And so how much of it is a distortion of us seeing that as a reality versus all the other small churches that do exist under 500 people that make up like 54 or 60% of like the actual nation's churches. Right. Like that's, I kind of get a little bit boggled when I think of the numbers, but yet when I try to analyze culture, I'm quick to look at, what's happening in megachurch spaces. Are these just all a bunch of idiots that are following some guy, or right. like what's actually happening? And that's tough for me.
I don't know. I resist the urge to make. No, I don't. I like to make predictions. But I don't think my batting average will necessarily be that high. So I try to make predictions vague.
That's the key. That's the key.
Yeah, right. I know. But I think you should resist the urge to think that at all what's going to happen to some degree. Like you can follow a trend and say, if this trend continues, this is what this will look like. But you don't really know, and certainly you can't predict how to change it or shape it. So I'm just going to ride it and just see.
Right.
I'm just not scared of whatever it might mean, I guess. I don't know another way to put it. So I don't know what's going to happen. I think I get the sense that it's insane that 20-year-olds are going to mega churches, but I feel like it's in a way that's a last gasp, or it's okay, I'll put it this way. Mega churches are unbelievably effective and efficient at what they do attractionally, and they know how to answer they've preemptively thought of all the pushback that you're going to give. They've already addressed it before you cognitively even pops in your mind. It's a manipulation game to some degree, like any corporate thing. They have big data, big money, big marketing, and that always works on individuals. It just always does.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be people that join cults forever. They'll never stop. So it's proportional to somebody's desperation for concrete answers is how big the megachurch will be. So as we mature as a society, it will be sillier and sillier.
Yeah. I think that's it. Yeah. And ultimately, to me, it just culminates in affirmation on what you guys are doing, what other voices in the space are doing. I mean, to the point you just made, I mean, even thinking of the progression of big data and technology and AI and everything else that's being made available for tools for those types of organizations to take advantage of. I mean, personally, that does terrify me a little bit. I mean, Vice wrote an article on some of the big data that they used with Brexit, and then how there's some interesting tie-ins in some of the GOP politics with some of that stuff, and you're just like, dang, that tech actually exists. And so it's kind of how much more that becomes available for very independent organizations to take advantage of. I think it creates a curveball that we don't see coming, and I had no idea what that's going to be like.
Exactly. There's tons of, if you look at history, it's just loaded with curveballs that you never expected. How World War I started, for instance, was almost random. And you see these flashpoints in history that just are not predictable. So we'll see some of those, and you just can't predict them. That'll change things way more profoundly than slow, steady progress we think we're making towards X, Y, and Z.
Right.
There'll be some curveballs that just unanticipated. Would it be technological, climate, sociological war? I mean, who knows? There's going to be curveballs that you can't possibly expect.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
No, Matt, dude, you're such a stud. Thank you so much for your time today. This has really been fun. I just think the conversation points and the questions are really, really good. And I feel like the future holds this requirement that the people of God, release their grasp on the forms that got us this far.
Yes.
And so I appreciate a lot of what you've been saying. So, where can people find you? Can they find you specifically on Twitter, or is it just the Bad Christian Twitter feed, or how do people find you?
Yeah, my Twitter's Matt Carter. Zod Carter is my Twitter handle, but yeah, find me there. But badchristian.com. You can say we do a bunch of other podcasts ourselves and host, release and help other podcasts that we think are helpful and cool to put out. So you can find a bunch of different stuff that suits your speed. If you don't like our show or it's too dirty for you, then don't listen to it. No big deal.
We're waiting for the invite, my friend. We're just sitting here waiting for the invite. So appreciate that. Anyway, my friend, thank you for your time. Andy, any last words?
No, I have no last words. I was going to ask Matt if you had any last words, but...
No last words. Never. That's a question that's never. Does anybody ever answer that? I'm not criticizing the question, but that's a terrible question, isn't it? Like, what does anybody ever say? Last words.
Any last words?
It feels like you're on the spot,
Yep.
Okay, then no last words.
No last words, man. Thanks a lot. Appreciate your time.
And what you couldn't see during that interview was that over his right shoulder, covering a speaker, was a big yellow shroud that had the letters VOX on it. And we pointed that out off air and said, that is the sign.
It was predestined.
That is the sign of the covenant, my friend. Anyway, thought that was really, really interesting. And as always, agree, disagree. I think that, our posture, I've worked for megachurches and they do so much good in the kingdom. But it is interesting to think about what's next.
Yeah.
I don't know that form will be the form that takes us, the next 50 years or whatever, maybe.
Right. And the afterthought that I've had was like that. I think this is something I'm just saying. I think it's true, and I'm willing to put more like a hard kind of. I think this is a reality that's happening and it will continue to happen. The podcast space has really been like the primary space where these bigger conversations are being allowed to happen.
Right.
Aside from having my friend over dinner and talking these things out, but like actually having somewhere you can go resourcefully to wrestle with like really conversational content around contemporary ideas, especially these kind. You don't find these happening from the stage in churches. There really isn't other forums where that's really taking place. And that to me is what's personally exciting. I think that I think Bad Christian pioneered that, like in this conversation format and breaking down, Christian podcasts from just being recorded sermons, you know, so actually producing original content and bringing up great questions and conversations. So, I think that's going to continue to grow. They said they're like 1%, like top 1% of like the podcasts that are out there.
Right.
So I mean that just says to me like there's so much room, and there's still
we're top. I would say we are top 50%. Easily top 50% of podcasts out there. Yep, absolutely. Joyce Meyer is firmly in my sights.
Oh yeah,
to overtake her podcast.
You got a target on your back, Joyce. Watch out.
That's right. Look out, Joyce. You better keep those boots a moving. So anyway, brothers and sisters, we're so grateful for you, so grateful for our Patreon supporters that allow us to do all kinds of things and improve stuff and to feed our families and I bought some books the other day, which I was very excited about.
Yeah. Hey, what's the update on Revelation? Where are we at with that?
Oh, Revelation, it's beautiful. I'm getting to the place where those 20 that are being framed are they're skeletons now.
Okay.
And so they started out as little baby fetuses, and now they're growing into skeletons, and they'll have eyes and ears and hands. The problem now, I mean, I guess I could, and see, the problem is I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to this stuff.
Sure.
It's maybe the only area of my life, but I kind of want to read every single book out there ever written on the history of Revelation, so I don't miss anything. So, like, I mean, I have literally 2 or 3 cubes of books just sitting there that I keep in. And every time I read a new one, I have to go back and kind of reformat. And so it's just, so my input, if you're a Strength Finders kind of person, I have this thing called input, which means you're obsessed about all sorts of information. So at some point I have to turn that off, because what I want to do is I want to get 20 done, because I need to see how they relate to each other instead of just dropping one at a time.
Right.
But maybe I should just drop one at a time.
Yeah. Or maybe, do you think you could at least maybe drop one? Like you could say, I could go on one.
I could drop it like it's hot. The problem is, yes, I could, but then... And that was my plan. I had one. I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is an easy one. But then the more I read, the more I realize that one really is 3. and then I get into it, and I'm like, well, no, I don't want to give the example, but it really turns out to be 3 podcasts.
Yeah.
Just the one intro.
Yeah.
And it's the question that I'm answering is, what kind of literature is it?
Yeah.
So it's 3 kinds of literature, but then evangelical Christians will hear the kind of literature it is, and then they'll just import, oh, well, okay, then that means that. And you're like, well, no. And so it's wonderful. So yes, there'll be one, and maybe all that one will say, the Book of Revelation by John.
Next time
on the Book of Revelation by John, we'll have... So yes, the anxiety's better, so I'm able to at least focus, concentrate, and write. So
okay.
I'm thankful for that. Well, no, it's huge. I mean, medication is a wonderful thing. So that's helpful. AFib though, man, I've been crap, hate it. But all that is to say, at least the brain part seems a little better.
Okay.
So I'm hoping to take some work on that. Take some ground on that soon.
Good.
So thanks for asking. I appreciate hearing that. Our people have been unbelievably patient as I've been wrestling through all this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Love
all
you.
right.
We're done. Matt Carter.
That's it.
May the Lord bless you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up his countenance to you and give you peace. Amen.
Hey, thanks for listening to the Vox Podcast. Learn more about us at voxpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at The Vox Podcast, and now support us on Patreon at patreon.com/VoxPodcast.